Now we take a few moments to move into a time of deeper awareness, time to prepare ourselves for the message and the music, this lovely service, and connecting with that power and that presence. So I invite you now, if you haven't done so already, to maybe get comfortable in your seats. Stretch out those neck muscles a little bit, especially if you've had a long drive or been sitting. Close your eyes if you feel called, or maybe just half close them. And in this moment, let's take a deep collective holy breath. Nice, easy breath in, breathing in, holding it for a moment, just letting it go. Sigh if you wish. Take another deep breath, this time a little bit deeper, filling those lungs with the precious oxygen, holding it for a moment. And as we release this breath, we just let it go, and we let all the worries, the concerns, the to-dos, the to-don'ts, the comings, the goings, we just let that go. And we begin to just sync up with our own divine rhythm and timing with each breath. Just a nice breath in, hold it, and breathing out. Just like the ocean, coming in, going out. Coming in and going out. As your breath syncs with your own divine rhythm and timing, I invite you to just picture your mind and maybe all the things that are going through it, the little nuances, the little voices, the things. And just like the clouds in the sky, just feel them begin to dissipate under the noontime sun. That long-time sun burning brightly, making your mind a clear slate, open to suggestion with each consecutive breath. Feel yourself sink deeper and deeper into that center space, that inner sanctuary, this place where we will come to know that spirit inside of us that guides us, that directs us, that comforts us, that loves us. I invite you to feel that warmth right now as you breathe. The energy of this room and this community, all syncing as one unit, one cell, one power. As I begin to speak these following words, I invite you to take them into your ears, into your mind. Let the vibrations just reverberate throughout your mind, your consciousness, and your body. This truth statement says, in preparation for renewal in my soul, mind, and body, the Lenten season, I recommit to my spiritual practices of release and affirmative prayer. In preparation for renewal in my soul, mind, and body this Lenten season, I recommit to my spiritual practices of release and affirmative prayer. And keeping these words and this vibration in mind, I invite you to take a moment and picture anything that might be blocking or hindering your connection with that divine source. Maybe it's a judgment. Maybe it's a grudge. Maybe it's a habit. And just take a moment and feel the love of God begin to dissipate that. And show you the right way to proceed, the right way to become your fullest and best self. And so we take a moment now and contemplate this for a few minutes, or even a minute, into a period of silence. To silence. we begin to move out of this time. I invite you to stay connected with your breath, that peace, that presence. Open your eyes. Maybe wiggle your fingers, your toes, and bring yourselves back into this present moment. And remember this prayer as we move forward from Psalms 51:10. Create in me a clean heart, O Lord, and put a new and right spirit within me. And we just say for this time, amen. So it is. I'm grateful to be here today with you all in lovely Prescott, Arizona. I said Prescott last service, and somebody reminded me, and it's funny, I was practicing it all day. Prescott, 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 Prescott. I get up here, Prescott. And I made sure to really enunciate it too. Prescott. But Prescott. So thank you for the reminder, my dear friend. I'd like to thank my mentor, friends, colleague, and just overall great person, Reverend Richard Rogers, for inviting me here. He called me personally and asked if I would come up, and the board of directors for inviting me as well. I have a long-time relationship with Richard, and you just don't say no to Richard. He's so, those of you who know him, he's so amiable, and he's just such a good guy. And of course it was a yes, and Prescott is not a hard sell. And I'm so grateful to be here in the warming embrace of the arms of this great community. So thank you so much. And if it doesn't work out well, I've got this nice wooden thing, and I can just duck behind it. So I know y'all got books behind your chairs and stuff. Well, this week is the beginning of our Lenten season. Can you believe Ash Wednesday is already here upon us? Like, where's 2025 going? And so I would like to today move into a little deeper exploration of Lent from a metaphysical perspective. It's not a word, metaphysics, we don't hear a lot in Unity anymore. And regardless of your understanding and practice around this in the past, around this sacred season, I hope you will be moved into deeper insights, fresh perspectives, and enhanced spiritual practices that will help you to create a positive and impactful Lent experience. And this is most important because this is what we're all about in Unity, to effect meaningful change in our lives, right? Because we can study this stuff, we can talk about all these great spiritual principles and all this and all that, but if we don't apply it in our lives and it doesn't improve our lives, then what are we here for? I love that fifth unity principle. So today, we are going to live and Lent live. Y'all ready to do that? Can I get an amen? Yes. Well, the story of this gentleman named John Smith. And John was the only Protestant to move into a large Catholic neighborhood. And on the first Friday of Lent, John was outside grilling a big, juicy steak on his grill. Meanwhile, all of his neighbors were eating cold tuna fish sandwiches for supper. And this went on each Friday for Lent. And on the last Friday of Lent, the neighborhood men, after they've been hanging over the fence like the guy on a Home Improvement, just drooling, just drool going down the fence, they said, you know what? We got to do something about John here. He's tempting us to eat meat on the Friday of Lent, and we can't take it anymore. So what they did is they decided to try to convert John to be a Catholic. So they went over to John's house, and they had a little, informal chat, talked to him, and were happy that he was agreeable, and he decided to join all his neighbors and become a Catholic. So they took him right to the church. They got him in the car, drove him right to the church, and they got in front of the priest, and the priest sprinkled some water over him and said, John, you were born a Baptist, you were raised a Baptist, and now you are a Catholic. So the men were so relieved. Their problem was solved. And now their biggest Lenten temptation was no more. So a year passed, and the next Lenten season rolled around. And the first Friday of Lent came. And just at supper time, when the neighborhood was settling down for their nice, cold tuna fish sandwiches, came the waffling smell of steak cooking on the grill. And the neighborhood men could not believe their noses. What's going on here? They called each other up and decided to meet over at John's yard and see if he had forgotten about the first Friday of Lent. The group arrived just in time to see John standing over his grill. He was sprinkling some water over his steak. You can imagine this is a grill. And saying, "You were born a cow, you were raised a cow, and now you are a fish." So in all these teachings and stories, I want you to know it's a matter of perspective, right? Everything we talk about in our spiritual walk and our journey and our studies is a matter of perspective. And so unity is no different than that. So we have this, again, this metaphysical perspective, which is unique to unity. And I love it when I talk about the Bible because, I talk with all different religions and faiths. I love talking interfaith with different ministers and imams and all these spiritual leaders. And one of the things I love about unity is we have all the lenses. So when you look at some of these Bible stories, you have a cultural lens, you have a historical lens, you have a literal lens. Sometimes it just says what it says, and then sometimes you're like, really? We got to do that? So again, this idea of the metaphysical lens, and what I want you to picture is more or less the metaphysical interpretation, how we do things, is looking beyond the meaning. So like archetypes, if you're familiar with dream work, right, you might see a rabbit in your dream. Well, a rabbit may not mean it's a rabbit. A rabbit might mean something you need to look at within yourself. And so a lot of these stories in the Bible, a lot of these characters, places, numbers, things like that, are all things that are open for this deeper interpretation, but yet we have to discern what it is for ourselves. If you've ever been snorkeling, my wife and I love to go to the Caribbean or some warm places like that, where they got reefs and you look above the ocean, you got your mask and snorkel on, and you see boats and you see waves and you see things. But then when you dunk your head under the water and you see all this sea life and little fishes and coral and all this stuff floating around, it's a much wider world. And that's all Unity Metaphysics is it's looking into these stories and these characters and things and seeing the deeper meaning behind them, and then sitting with that in our prayer and meditation time and really listening to what that voice tells us it means and how using the knowledge we learn can improve our lot in life. So this term Lent, what is that? Well, it originates from the Anglo-Saxon word for spring, because it's kind of close to spring, right? And it symbolizes a season of renewal and new beginnings. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, described Lent as a season of spiritual growth. It's a time for progressive unfoldment, and this perspective encourages us to view Lent as not a period of deprivation, but as a sacred time to deepen our spiritual practices and also to align more closely with our true nature, which is spirit. So the Lenten journey becomes an inward path where we confront and release thoughts, beliefs, and habits that no longer serve us. So it's a time to fast from unwanted beliefs, and in the words of Unity Minister Reverend Teresa Burton, not only to fast from unwanted beliefs, but to feast on the truth, these truth principles. So in Lent, technically there are three pillars to Lent. Does anybody know what these pillars are? Anybody study? I was raised Catholic. One pillar is one of our unity principles. Prayer, yes. I know who my prayer chaplains are here. Prayer. So the three pillars are prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. That's not a word you hear very often, almsgiving. I always think of the beggar on the street. Alms for the poor, alms for the poor. It kind of brings that to mind. But what these three pillars serve as is they serve as a foundational practices for our spiritual growth and transformation. And so these disciplines, what they do is they invite us to deepen our connection with the divine, to purify our consciousness, and to express our innate generosity and understanding of the spiritual law of giving and receiving. So the first pillar, and I think of it as a three-legged stool, right? Anybody try and sit on a two-legged stool or one-legged stool? Doesn't work out too good. So the first pillar is prayer. And through prayer, what? We deepen our divine connection. And I always like to begin in prayer. You know, there's nothing that we endure that cannot be began in prayer. Years ago in seminary, I had this instructor for my prayer class, and I would call her, and I would be upset about something. I was kind of like the Bart Simpson of our school. And I would call her up with some calamity or something befell me, and I couldn't get my assignment in on time. And she was the sweetest person, Dr. Catherine. And she said to me, "Now, Ken, have you called Silent Unity yet?" And for those of you who might be new to Unity, Silent Unity is a 24/7 prayer line where you can call and receive prayer anytime, any place. So I went, and I called Silent Unity and prayed with them over the matter, and then called her back, and she would work with me, and things resolved. And I felt much better. And if nothing else, I felt better. So beginning in prayer, that always stuck with me. Prayer is a practice of communing with the divine and aligning our consciousness with the higher truths of our being. Prayer is not about beseeching an eternal deity or begging or pleading, but really, it's about recognizing and affirming our oneness with God. And that's what we call affirmative prayer. So this inner community fosters a clean heart, a renewed spirit, as we attune ourselves to the divine wisdom and love. So this is a practice we're called to engage with during this Lenten season for 40 days. And 40 symbolizes it's a number of completion. Moses, Jesus in the wilderness, the Israelites in the desert. It's a number of, like seasoning ourselves, getting back to our spiritual roots, our spiritual core. The other part of prayer is in Lenten is we also attend services. Do you guys do Holy Week services here, I'm sure? You have special things for the Lenten season. So praying with others. In Unity, there's a t-shirt running around that says, "Praise well with others." But that's important. And Jesus stated that where two or more are gathered, there I am also. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, it was like when I talked about with Dr. Catherine, sometimes we're not able to pray for ourselves. We might be in a situation, our mind is just flittering and fluttering through every possibility, and we're thinking outside, we're thinking in our intellectual minds or rational minds, and we need somebody, a prayer partner or a prayer chaplain or in Silent Unity to remind us who we are. And so I invite you to look at prayer again, revisit your prayer practice during this Lenten season. You know, what things do you do to get you into that mindset of oneness? How do you talk to God? Everybody's a little different. But the most important thing is reestablishing and making a commitment to an ongoing daily connection during this time and hopefully beyond. And if not, you got next Lent. Sister Jose Maria Escriva says this about prayer: you don't know how to pray because there's no right way or wrong way. There's different methods of prayer, there's different ways. There's no hard, fast rule as long as you're doing it from the heart. So Sister Jose Maria says, you don't know how to pray? Put yourself in the presence of God. And as soon as you have said, "Lord, I don't know how to pray," you can be sure you've already begun. You know what's funny is truth seekers and truth students, we could have been studying this stuff for 30, 50, 10, 5 years, whatever. Sometimes we forget how to pray. And that's why, again, we have prayer partners. We have people to help us remember that. So during this Lenten season, it's about setting a dedicated time each day, maybe several times a day. Our Muslim brothers and sisters, they like to pray 8 times a day. I haven't worked up to that yet. But sometimes. All right, are you ready for the second leg? Yes? Fasting. Oh, I see the little frowns and scowls. Fasting. Not giving up my cookies. I'm not giving up my Oreos. I want that steak. Fasting, but I invite you to think of fasting this way. Yes, it is, often associated with diet, right? Or food or drink. But I invite you to take it a deeper meaning. We talked about prayer, and in unity we talk about what goes with prayer. Denials. Denials and affirmations. So you hear affirmative prayer, saying affirmations, conditioning your mind. Denials or fasting, what that does is it clears out the negative thoughts, the negative comments, the negative beliefs. So think of it as simply releasing. Simply releasing. And that's not always an easy thing to do, right? You could say, in the words of Matt Fradd, you could say that prayer without fasting is like boxing with one hand tied behind your back. And that fasting without prayer is, well, dieting. Well, here's another way to look at fasting. Because oftentimes, in our lives, in our daily walk, throughout the year, we put up all these roadblocks. Now, I imagine in Arizona there's quite a bit of road construction, right? You have like 3 seasons, winter, fall, spring, and road construction season. Kind of like Alaska. So you have all these barriers, right? These barricades and these signs and these tape and fences and sandbags and all these things going on, and it's hard to get to your destination, right? It's taking you 2 hours to get to what should have taken you 20 minutes. And think of those barriers as kind of like when we're trying to communicate with Spirit sometimes in prayer, right? We got all these barriers, we got these judgments and these biases and these resentments going on, and what we need to do is start clearing out these barriers, taking them down. Kind of like you wish you can drive your car and just boom, 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 knock out the cones like Pac-Man. So clearing it out, making a clear path to where we have that give and take from Spirit, that connection. Fasting. And you can also diet if you want. I'm doing it, not doing very well at it, but I'm trying. So that's the second leg. Lastly, the third leg. What's the third? Alms. There's only one left. Alms for the poor. So I want you to think of alms is not simply just money or charity, because part of the deal for penance for the Western traditions for Lent is to do penance, to do some kind of community service or activity to atone for the bad things we've done during the year, for the horrible people we've been. Not me, but I'm just saying. But I invite you to think of alms in terms of our unity principle or the spiritual law of giving and receiving. We can get behind that, right? And in giving and receiving, what do we talk about when we talk about giving? 3 things: time, talent, and treasure. 3 things. My dad is 84 years old now. I know, it went by fast. He says it really went by fast. And he tells me, because he's pretty much got everything, and I don't know what to get him anymore for his birthday or things like that. And he's pretty much homebound. But he tells me, he says, Ken, he says, the best thing you can give anybody is your time. Give of your time. Come for a visit. Make the time for a phone call. Maybe help out, do a few small errands, but your time. And so I think about all you hear on a Sunday with your time, giving of your time, giving and receiving. Our talents. We have many talents. Danae, your vocal talent, and Chris, your musical talent. I mean, just beautiful. And you're giving those to the church and the administrators and the AV people and all the chefs down below that go to make this Sunday happen. Giving willingly, lovingly. Treasure. Those of you who donate financially or donate things or buy things for the church, contribute to the wish list. You know, that's all part of contributing, of giving alms. Supporting your ministry. Also, as part of that, is receiving. How many people are good receivers here? We're all good at giving, right? We all want to give. We want to give the gift, to be the person that gives that gift. But oftentimes, we're not good receivers. Take this into account. Have you ever been given a gift before, and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, you shouldn't have. And in your mind, you're thinking, I didn't get you anything. I'm a real heel. Oh, my gosh. You gave me this gift. But what we're doing in that essence is we're depriving the person giving us the gift of that joy, of their own spiritual development, of giving alms to us. So in addition to giving alms, we're also being good receivers of alms. and giving thanks for those alms. Simply saying, you know what? Thank you so much for thinking of me. Thank you so much. Thank you. I accept the gift. Alms. Out of the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, it gives a statement on how giving is to be measured. It says true giving is measured by the love and substance and faith that the giver puts into the gift. Wow. The statement, who gives himself with his alms feeds three. Himself, his hungry neighbor, and me, is founded on the teachings of our brother and master teacher, Jesus. So again, the way we give is important. Giving out of joy, not begrudgingly. Oh, God, I got to go do this for this person. No, we want to be joyous and figure out that why. What's that spark that makes us give with joy? In Psalm 51:10, which I alluded to in the meditation, it serves as a profound affirmation for our Lenten journey. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And this heart in this passage represents our subconscious mind, that mind that sits below just our conscious mind. And what that is it's the seat of our emotions, our beliefs, and our desires. A clean heart signifies a purified consciousness, which is what Lent is about. Free from error thoughts and open to divine inspiration. The right spirit refers to a steadfast and aligned attitude when we're in alignment with our spiritual truth. And by embracing the three pillars of Lent, which are prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, we actively participate in this inner purification and renewal, and we align ourselves more fully with our divine nature. There's a passage from an unknown contributor, and it's titled If We Were. And it kind of highlights this idea of what Lent is in practical terms. It says if we were knives, Lent would be a time to sharpen our cutting edges. If we were cars, Lent would be a time for an oil change and a tune-up. If we were swimming pools, Lent would be a time to filter out the dirt in our water. If we were gardens, how many gardeners are here? If we were gardens, Lent would be a time to fertilize our soil and dig out the weeds. If we were carpets, Lent would be the time to get power cleaned. If we were computers, Lent would be a time to overhaul our disk drive. If we were highways, Lent would be a time to repair our cracks and fill those potholes. If we were TV sets, Lent would be a time to adjust our focus and our fine-tuning. If we were silverware, Lent would be a time to clean away our tarnish. And if we were batteries, Lent would be a time to be recharged. And if we were seeds, Lent would be a time to germinate and to reach the sun. But we are none of these things. We are people who sometimes miss the mark. And through grace, we have the opportunity to correct and atone for some of the things we may not have done as well as we would have liked. We're people who sometimes get spiritually lazy. Not me. We need to get back into shape. We're people who sometimes become selfish. We need to stretch out our narrowness and begin giving again. We're people who sometimes lose sight of our purpose on earth and have immense promise within us, and we need to regain our vision of that. And because we're also people who sometimes tend to put those things off, I'm not a procrastinator by any means, we need a special sort of official time to concentrate on doing them. So we have Lent one time a year. The Easter candy will taste sweeter. The Easter flowers will bloom more brightly. The Easter sun will shine more as we move on through this Lenten journey. So let's do so with our hearts open, the transformation, and our minds receptive to divine wisdom. By integrating prayer, fasting, and almsgiving into our spiritual practice, we create a holistic approach to our own purification and renewal. This season becomes not solely about abstaining from certain foods or habits, but about feasting on spiritual truth and nourishing our souls. In the words of Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, Lent is a season of spiritual growth, a time for progressive unfoldment. May we each experience this unfoldment, emerging from Lent with renewed spirits and cleansed hearts, ready to express more fully that divine light within us. So let us embrace this Lenten season as a divine opportunity to live more fully, to love more deeply, and to shine our light more brightly. Ladies and gentlemen, as you move forward today, live and Lent live. God bless each and every one of you. Namaste.